The air was a suffocating blanket, thick with the smell of burning plastic and something else, some foul and metallic that clawed at the back of my throat. My knuckles were white, fused to the steering wheel, but the car wasn't moving. None of them were. We were a metal sarcophagus, miles long, entombed on the interstate, a monument to a world that had vanished in a whisper. The radio had died an hour ago, replaced by a flat, tuneless hiss that felt like the sound of static in my own brain. Through the grimy windshield, all I saw was the endless procession of brake lights, a red river of futility stretching into the haze. To my left, the city skyline was a jagged maw of concrete and glass, now choked with plumes of black smoke that scraped against an already bruised sky. But it wasn't the smoke or the distant muffled screams that pierced the perpetual thrum of panic that made my stomach clench and my breath catch. It was the movement ahead, not the cars, the people. They weren't running from anything anymore. They were just moving. A slow, shambling tide emerging from the side streets, flowing into the gridlocked lanes, weaving between abandoned vehicles. Their clothes were torn, their skin pallid and strangely luminous in the failing light. And their heads were all tilted at that unnatural angle, jaws slack, eyes vacant as ancient stones. I'd seen the shaky phone footage on the news before the signal died. I'd dismissed it as hysteria, a fever dream. Now it was spilling into my reality. A woman in a tattered business suit, her face streaked with black fluid, stumbled past my driver's side window. Her bare foot slapped wetly on the asphalt. Her gaze, milky and unfocused, seemed to pass right through me, through the car, through everything. Yet her trajectory was fixed. She wasn't just walking aimlessly. She was being drawn, pulled by some unseen current towards the epicenter of the city, towards where I knew Sarah, my sister, was supposed to be. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. Sarah, the school, was she safe? Was anyone? The question burned, a futile ember in a world rapidly turning to ash. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the horn blaring a pathetic, desperate sound that was instantly swallowed by the distant rumble of collapsing buildings and the ever-present low moan that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath me. This wasn't supposed to happen, not like this. Just 2 days ago, the world was merely concerned. Isolated outbreaks, the news anchors had chirped, their smiles a little too wide, their eyes betraying a tremor of unease. A new variant, they said, a particularly aggressive strain of the flu-like virus that had been making headlines for weeks.
Confined to hospitals, they promised. Contained, manageable. Then came the cough. Not a sniffle, not a throat tickle. A dry, rasping cough that seemed to tear at the lungs from the inside, spreading with the insidious speed of wildfire. I remember Dr. Anya Sharma's frantic broadcast, her usual composed demeanor shattered, her voice cracking as she delivered the death knell. The virus, it's mutated airborne. We're seeing aerosolized transmission with unprecedented virulence. No direct contact needed. Just breathe. Global extinction, it's no longer a theoretical possibility. It's happening. The words had been a punch to the gut, a cold, hard truth hurled into the comfortable illusion of our modern lives. When the virus mutated airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. I'd heard her say it, seen the terror in her eyes, felt the slow dread creep into my bones, even as I still clung to hope. Now, watching the shambling dead outside, I understood. She wasn't exaggerating. She was just reporting the facts. A sudden sharp crack from the passenger side window made me flinch. A man, eyes glazed over, had slammed his open palm against the glass, leaving a greasy print. He wasn't looking at me, but at the empty passenger seat, as if something within him recognized the warmth of a living body, even through tempered glass. His jaw worked, a wet, sickening sound. It was the sound of hunger. I threw the car into reverse, ignoring the angry blares of horns behind me, fading echoes of a past life. The vehicle bucked, stalled. My hands fumbled for the ignition, sweat beading on my forehead. The man was still there, his dead eyes fixed on the empty seat, his mouth opening wider, a guttural moan escaping his throat. No, not here, not like this. The engine finally roared to life, a beautiful, violent sound. I jammed it into drive, swerving violently around the stalled SUV in front of me, scraping paint, barely missing a woman who was now crawling on all fours, her progress agonizingly slow. The rearview mirror showed a growing cluster of the infected, drawn by the engine's noise, their shambling gait picking up a macabre pace. I pressed the accelerator, forcing my way into an exit lane, tires screaming as I bounced over a curb and onto a debris-strewn ramp. The off-ramp descended into a canyon of abandoned cars, choked with discarded possessions, suitcases, children's toys, empty gas cans. Each item a tiny monument to a desperate escape attempt. The air grew thicker, the smell of burnt rubber mingling with the metallic tang of drying blood. A lone siren wailed mournfully in the distance, a ghostly echo of order in a city utterly consumed by chaos. My mind raced, grappling with the sheer enormity of it all. Global extinction. The words were an anchor, dragging me down into an ocean of despair. How could it have happened so fast? One day, a cough. The next, a world of monsters. The speed of transmission, the horrifying efficacy of the airborne mutation had simply overwhelmed everything. No military, no government, no scientist had stood a chance. The infected weren't just a threat, they were a flood, an unstoppable tide. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles aching. Sarah. I had to find Sarah. She was at the elementary school on Elm Street, teaching 3rd grade. "Stay put, Alex," she'd said this morning, her voice tinny over the phone. "They've locked us down. No one in, no one out. We're safe here." A bitter laugh escaped me. Safe. The word tasted like ash. The school was miles away, deep in the city's heart, a heart that was now rotting. Every street was a gauntlet, every alley a potential trap. But I had to try. What else was there? To sit here and wait for the inevitable? To let the global extinction claim me without a fight? No, not while Sarah was out there. A sudden screech of tires ahead jarred me from my thoughts. A black sedan, its front end smashed, lay overturned, its wheels still spinning lazily in the air. Bodies were strewn around it, some still, some twitching. And then I saw them. Not the slow, shambling ones I'd grown accustomed to. These were different. They were running. Faster, much faster. Their limbs moved with a jerky, unnatural speed, muscles rippling under pallid skin. Their eyes, though still clouded, seemed to possess a savage, focused intensity I hadn't seen before. They weren't just driven by instinct, they were hunters. My breath hitched. Another mutation? Faster ones now? The thought was a cold spike of ice in my chest. If the virus had evolved again, if the infected could move with this speed and aggression, then truly, global extinction had indeed become unstoppable. There would be no hiding, no outrunning. One of them, a lean figure in a torn security guard uniform, spotted my car. Its head snapped up, a high-pitched shriek tearing from its throat. A sound of pure, unadulterated malice that scraped against my eardrums. It started to sprint, a broken, terrifying sprint, gaining on me with impossible speed. I stomped on the gas, the engine roaring in protest as the car lurched forward. The security guard was closing in, its open mouth revealing rows of sharpened teeth. Its speed was incredible. It slammed into the back of my car, the impact rattling the frame, leaving a grotesque smear on the rear window. Then it started to claw. Metal shrieked, glass splintered. I had to get out of the city. Sarah or no Sarah, I had to survive this immediate threat. I swerved again, taking a sharp right into a residential street, leaving the security guard behind, its shriek fading into the cacophony of the dying city. The terror was a cold knot in my stomach, growing larger with every passing second. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was a race against an enemy that learned, that evolved, that became faster, stronger. An enemy that had transformed the entire world into an inescapable living tomb. And I was just one man in a beat-up sedan against an unstoppable tide. The night was falling, cloaking the city in shadow, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the real nightmare was only just beginning. The residential streets were a labyrinth of silent houses and overgrown lawns, punctuated by the occasional flicker of a security light or the desperate, rhythmic thud of an axe against a barricaded home. Each thud was a heartbeat of defiance, quickly fading into the general hum of decay. I pressed the gas pedal, the speedometer needle dancing wildly, my eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the darkening road ahead. The rapid infected were a new, horrifying variable, a game changer. If they were widespread, then every plan, every instinct for survival had to be recalibrated. My hands were shaking, not just from the fear, but from the adrenaline still pumping through my veins, leaving a metallic taste in my mouth. The security guard's shriek, the sight of its sharpened teeth, replayed in my mind. Had I imagined the teeth? Or had the virus mutated beyond merely reanimating corpses, twisting flesh into something truly monstrous? The thought made me gag. The dashboard clock glowed an accusatory red. 6:47 p.m. Sarah's school would have been out hours ago. Had she made it home? Or to our designated emergency meeting point at the old community center? We'd planned for natural disasters, for power outages, even for civil unrest. Never for this. Never for the kind of global extinction that turned your neighbors into predators. A sudden flash of movement caught my eye. Ahead, a street cleaner, a hulking orange beast, lay on its side, blocking the entire road. Its flashing hazard lights, a pathetic beacon of routine, continued their lonely vigil. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching. The steering wheel bit into my hands. My head snapped forward, hitting the headrest. Adrenaline surged again, sharpening my senses. Blocked, dead end. I scanned the surroundings, houses, fences, no easy way through. To turn around meant going back towards where I'd left the fast one. No, I wouldn't do that. Not if I could help it. My eyes fell on a narrow gap between two houses, a paved alleyway that looked like a small park. It was barely wide enough for the car. Risky.
But what wasn't now? Okay, Alex, I muttered, my voice hoarse. This is it. Every decision counts. The words felt hollow, a desperate attempt to impose order on a universe that had abandoned it. I shifted into reverse, carefully maneuvering the car, the broken tail light scraping against a mailbox. A porcelain birdhouse shattered on the pavement. As I backed up, a sound reached me, faint at first, then growing clearer. A rhythmic, dragging thud. It wasn't the frantic scratching of the fast ones, but the slow, relentless shuffle of the original infected. They were behind me, closing in. I glanced in the rearview mirror. 3 of them, silhouetted against the amber glow of a distant street lamp, were emerging from the intersection I'd just come from. One was missing an arm, dragging it uselessly. Another's jaw was unhinged, lolling to one side. They were slow, but persistent, and they were coming for me. My heart hammered. This was the dilemma of this new world, trapped between 2 evils, the fast, aggressive ones, or the slow, relentless tide. I made my choice. I cranked the steering wheel hard, eased the car forward, and began to thread the needle between the 2 houses. The side mirror scraped against brick and siding, a grating sound that made my teeth ache. Paint peeled. Glass showered the interior from the passenger window, which had been cracked during the highway escape. I pulled my arms in, shielding my face, but a shard nicked my cheek, leaving a thin, burning line of blood. The alley was tight, a claustrophobic tunnel of peeling paint and overflowing trash cans. The stench of stale garbage and something else, something sweet and sickly, filled the confined space. I could hear the infected outside, their low moans a constant bass note to my racing pulse. They were pressing against the brick, their soft thuds audible through the thin metal of the car. They couldn't get in, but they were there, everywhere. Finally, the front of the car broke free, emerging into a small, dilapidated park. Swings hung askew, a plastic slide lay overturned, and a sand pit was choked with weeds. The silence here was different from the highway. It was a heavy, watchful silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets, a sound that just days ago would have been comforting, but now felt profoundly unsettling. I stopped the car, engine idling. Kill the lights, Alex. Kill the engine. Blend in. My instinct screamed at me to go, to keep moving, but I knew better. Noise attracted them. Light attracted them. I had to think. I cut the engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. The only sound was my own ragged breathing, the blood pounding in my ears. I sat for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel, sweat trickling down my spine. The air was cool now, carrying the faint, distant scent of wood smoke. Sarah, Community Center, Elm Street. The school was too risky,
Locked down, she'd said. But the lockdown was probably breached hours ago. The community center was a better bet. It had a reinforced storm shelter, a designated meeting point for the family in case of catastrophe. It was on the outskirts of the city, closer to the highway, away from the dense population centers where the airborne virus had done its most devastating work. But getting there, that was the problem. I was practically out of gas. The fuel gauge needle hovered ominously near E. My reckless escape had cost me. I needed to find fuel, and quickly. My gaze drifted to the row of houses bordering the park. One of them, a two-story with faded yellow siding, had a detached garage. And next to the garage, a rusty red gas can. My heart gave a hopeful lurch. A chance. A slim one, but a chance. "Okay," I whispered, unbuckling my seatbelt. My movements were slow, deliberate. Every creak of the car, every rustle of my clothes felt amplified in the unnatural silence. I reached into the glove compartment, pulled out the worn baseball bat I kept for emergencies, a relic from a time when emergencies meant flat tires or aggressive panhandlers. Now it felt woefully inadequate. I opened the car door with excruciating slowness, the metal groaning in protest. The air outside was cool, crisp, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the day. The smells of smoke and decay were stronger here, a constant reminder of the unseen horrors that lurked just beyond my vision. I stepped out, my worn sneakers sinking slightly into the dew-laden grass. The bat felt heavy, cold, and utterly useless in my sweating palm. My eyes scanned the park, the houses, the shadows. No movement, no sounds other than the crickets and the frantic drumming of my own heart. The gas can. It was maybe 50 feet away, sitting innocently beside a stack of old tires. 50 feet in a world of monsters. It might as well have been 50 miles. I moved with agonizing slowness, each step a careful calculation. Heel toe, keeping my weight low, my ears straining for any deviation in the nocturnal symphony of crickets. The silence was unnerving, too silent. Where were they? The omnipresent moaning of the city was muffled here, but not gone. It was a distant, monstrous lullaby. I reached the perimeter of the garage. The smell of gasoline was faint, a whisper of hope. I peered around the corner, my bat held high, ready to strike. The alleyway behind the garage was dark, choked with overgrown bushes and shadows that stretched like grasping hands. Nothing, just the oppressive stillness. My hand reached for the gas can. It was surprisingly heavy, still half full. A blessing. A grip the cold metal, the smooth plastic cap, a beacon of life-sustaining fuel. Just as my fingers closed around the handle, a movement in the shadows of the alley caught my eye. A flicker. Not human. Something small. A cat? No. Too big. Too low to the ground. A low growl ripped through the air, vibrating in my chest. Not human. Not infected. Animal. A dog. But not a dog I recognized. This was something wild, something feral. A black shape exploded from the shadows, a blur of fur and teeth. It was a German shepherd, but its fur was matted with what looked like dried blood, its eyes glowing with an unnatural yellow luminescence in the dim light. Its lips were peeled back, revealing massive fangs that glistened wetly. Oh, God, not just the humans. The thought screamed through my mind, raw terror freezing my limbs. The virus, it had jumped species. When the virus mutated airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. The words echoed with a new, horrifying resonance. Not just us, everything. The dog lunged, a snarling missile of muscle and teeth. I instinctively brought the bat up, swinging wide, the gas can still clutched in my other hand. The bat connected with a sickening thud, a solid blow that should have sent any animal reeling. But this was no ordinary dog. It barely staggered, shaking its head once, then lunged again, a low, guttural snarl erupting from its throat. It was faster than the security guard, faster than anything I'd ever seen. Its teeth were aiming for my throat. I recoiled, dropping the gas can with a clang that seemed to shatter the night. No, I couldn't lose it, not now, not when it was my only chance. Adrenaline surged again, overriding the paralyzing fear. I screamed, a raw, animalistic sound, and swung the bat again, aiming for its head. This time, the dog saw it coming. It ducked, a blur of black fur, and my bat connected with its shoulder, sending a shock wave up my arm. The dog yelped, a sound of pain, but also of rage. It spun, lower to the ground now, circling me like a hungry wolf. I shuffled backward, eyes locked on its glowing yellow gaze. The gas can was lying just behind it. A desperate gamble. I needed to get past it. My breath hitched. Another growl. Low, deep. Not from the dog. From the bushes behind it. Another shape emerged from the darkness. Smaller, but just as feral. A pit bull, its muzzle caked with gore, its eyes burning with the same unnatural light. Two of them, and I was alone, armed with a baseball bat, trying to protect a can of gas. The pit bull was closer, lower to the ground. It darted forward, feinting left, then right. I swung the bat wildly, trying to keep both of them in my vision, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode through my chest. The German shepherd moved to flank me, its snarl a constant threat. I was trapped, back to the garage wall. My grip on the bat was slick with sweat. I could hear the city's mournful moan, growing louder again, a siren song of the dead. They were coming. They were always coming. "Stay back!" I roared, my voice cracking. It was a futile gesture, a desperate plea to creatures beyond reason. The pit bull lunged. I swung, aiming for its head. This time, I connected. A sickening crunch. The pit bull staggered, whimpering, its jaw hanging at a wrong angle. It dropped to the ground, twitching. But the German shepherd was already on me. It launched itself, a terrifying projectile. Its claws raked my arm as I brought the bat up defensively. Teeth snapped at my face. I felt a searing pain as its jaws closed on my shoulder, ripping through my jacket, tearing flesh. A scream tore from my throat. I brought the bat down, not a swing, but a desperate downward smash. It connected with the dog's head again and again, a rapid series of blows. The dog spasmed, its grip slackening, its body going limp. It fell, still twitching, its yellow eyes slowly dimming. I stumbled back, clutching my shoulder, blood soaking through my shirt. The pain was excruciating, a fiery agony that spread through my arm. My breath came in ragged gasps. I looked at the two dead dogs, then at the gas can. And then, at my bleeding shoulder, a bite from something infected. The words from Dr. Sharma's broadcast slammed into my mind. No direct contact needed, just breathe. But what if it was direct contact? What if the animal variant was different, faster, more potent? Panic threatened to overwhelm me. Was this it? Was this how my story ended? Not by the shambling dead, not by the swift hunters, but by a feral dog in a suburban park? No, not yet. I had to get the gas. I had to get to Sarah. I had to keep moving. I bent down, ignoring the throbbing pain, grabbed the gas can, and staggered back towards the car. Each step was agony, each breath a struggle. I could feel the cold, clammy sweat on my brow. I reached the car, fumbled with the gas cap, my hands shaken so violently I almost dropped the can. The gasoline sloshed into the tank, a sweet, pungent smell that usually meant freedom, but now just smelled like a desperate deferral of the inevitable. I slammed the gas cap shut, stumbled into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The roar was a blessed sound. I put the car in reverse, backing out of the alley, leaving the 2 dead dogs and the bloody memory of my encounter behind. My shoulder throbbed, a constant, agonizing reminder of the price of survival. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The houses, the park, the fading light. Everything seemed to watch me, judging my desperate flight. The compass on my dash read northeast, the community center. I had to focus. But as I drove, the thought gnawed at me, a relentless, insidious worm in my mind. What if the dog's bite meant more than just a physical wound? What if the virus, in its relentless pursuit of global extinction, had found a way to bridge the species gap through blood? My shoulder burned. Was it just the wound, or was something else beginning to take root? The question hung heavy in the air, a silent, terrifying countdown. The drive felt like a descent into a fever dream. The streets grew narrower, the houses more dilapidated, the air heavier with the scent of human despair and metallic decay. My shoulder throbbed with a dull, insistent pain, a constant reminder of the feral dog's bite. Every bump in the road sent a fresh jolt of agony through me, making me clench my teeth and gasp. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers cramped, trying to ignore the chilling questions that circled my mind like vultures. Was I infected? Was this the beginning? How long did I have? The thought of becoming one of them, of the shuffling, mindless horrors, filled me with a cold dread that eclipsed even the fear of death. To lose myself, to become a hungry, broken thing, that was the real horror. I tried to focus, to push the existential terror aside. The community center, Sarah, survival. Those were my anchors in this sea of chaos. The urban landscape began to give way to more open industrial areas. Warehouses with broken windows, abandoned factories, skeletal remains against the darkening sky. Fewer residential homes meant fewer infected, but the silence here was even more unsettling. It felt like the land itself held its breath. Then I saw it, a flickering light in the distance, a beacon of sorts. My heart leaped, then immediately plummeted. It wasn't a distant fire. It was a cluster of headlights, stationary, on the main access road to the community center. Dozens of them. Military vehicles. Hope, fragile and fleeting, surged through me. The military, they're here. They're containing it. It's not unstoppable after all. But then, as I drew closer, the scene sharpened into horrifying focus. The vehicles weren't organized. They were strewn across the road like discarded toys, many overturned, their metal skins scorched and torn. Tanks lay on their sides, their massive cannons pointing impotently at the sky. Humvees were reduced to twisted wrecks, and around them, a chilling tableau of bodies. Not just the infected, soldiers. I saw the distinct camouflage patterns, the helmets, the rifles still clutched in unmoving hands. They were everywhere, sprawled in impossible angles, their blood a dark, glistening sheen on the asphalt. And moving among them, like ghoulish pallbearers, were the infected. Dozens of them. Some were feeding on the fallen soldiers, their backs bent over the corpses, a sickening, tearing sound audible even through the closed windows of my car. Others just milled aimlessly, occasionally bumping into a vehicle, their low moans a mournful dirge. My stomach lurched. The words from Dr. Sharma's final desperate broadcast echoed in my mind. The National Guard has been deployed, but we're now receiving word that the Guard has suffered significant casualties. Military bases in Jackson and Chattanooga report 70% infection rates among personnel. 70%. I hadn't truly grasped the number until now, until I saw the evidence of it with my own eyes. The virus wasn't just fast, it was overwhelming. It infiltrated, it corrupted, it turned the very defenders into part of the unstoppable tide. Global extinction became unstoppable, I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The military, our last line of defense, had fallen. The realization settled over me like a shroud, cold and suffocating. There was no cavalry, no rescue, no hope for a large-scale containment. It was just me, just us, against them. I pulled off the main road, taking a detour through a maze of service roads behind the industrial complex, trying to avoid the gruesome scene. The community center was still there, a squat brick building with a faded sign, barely visible through the twilight. It looked deserted, a dark, silent sentinel of a forgotten era. I parked my car behind a cluster of overgrown bushes, killing the engine and lights. The silence here was complete, broken only by the distant moaning from the highway and the incessant throb in my shoulder. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I had to be careful. If Sarah was inside, I couldn't risk attention. I grabbed my baseball bat, the wood smooth and cool in my sweaty palm, and slowly, cautiously opened the car door. The air was heavy with the damp scent of earth and dying leaves. I moved with the stealth of a cat, hugging the shadows, my eyes constantly scanning the perimeter of the community center. The windows were dark, boarded up from the inside. Good. A sign of intelligent life, a sign of preparedness. Hope, that persistent, foolish ember, flickered again. I reached the main entrance. The heavy double doors were chained shut, a padlocked barrier against the encroaching darkness. A scrawled note, hastily written in what looked like permanent marker, was tacked to the door. Sheltered in place. Do not approach. No entry. Beneath it, in smaller, almost illegible script, basement access only. My heart leaped. She was here, or at least someone was. The basement access, that meant the storm shelter, our designated meeting point. I circled the building, following the faded arrow drawn on the brick wall. The side of the building was flanked by a dense thicket of thorny bushes, casting deep, impenetrable shadows. The air grew colder here, the ground uneven. My injured shoulder ached with every careful step. I found it. A heavy, rusted metal door, set into a concrete stairwell that led down into the earth. It was also chained and padlocked. But unlike the main entrance, there was no note, just the cold, unyielding metal. I pressed my ear against the cold steel. Nothing, no sounds, just the low hum of distant destruction. "Sarah?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Sarah, are you in there? It's Alex." Silence. Complete, utter silence. My heart began to sink, a heavy stone in my chest. Had I been wrong? Had they left? Or worse? I tried again, louder this time. "Sarah, it's me, Alex, let me in!" Still nothing. My hope, so recently rekindled, began to die, slowly, painfully. The despair was a suffocating weight. To come so far, to face so much, only to find an empty tomb. I leaned against the cold metal door, my head bowed, the baseball bat hanging loosely from my hand. The quiet was absolute, a stark contrast to the unending chaos of the city. It felt like the world had simply moved on without me, leaving me in this desolate, empty space. Then a faint sound reached my ears, so soft, so subtle, I almost missed it. A whisper, a shuffle, from inside the storm shelter. My head snapped up. I pressed my ear again, straining to hear. Yes, there it was again, a dragging sound, and then a low, guttural moan. Not Sarah. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The specific, dead sound of them were inside, the storm shelter, the one place we'd thought was safe, the one place I'd clung to as a beacon of hope. It was infested. How could they have gotten in? It was a reinforced shelter, designed to withstand anything, unless they were already inside when the virus mutated Airborne, unless someone had been infected within the walls, and then the global extinction simply consumed them all, from the inside out. The thought made me sick. My sister, was she one of them? Was her body now part of the unstoppable tide that had drowned the world? A rage, cold and consuming, began to build within me. A rage against the virus, against the unfairness, against the sheer relentless cruelty of this new world. I hammered on the metal door with my fist, ignoring the pain in my shoulder, ignoring the fear. "Sarah!" I screamed, my voice raw, broken. "Sarah, answer me!" A metallic clang from inside, then a louder moan, and another, and another. They were moving. They heard me. They were coming for the door. I backed away, bat raised, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions, despair, fury, a terrible, agonizing grief. The global extinction wasn't just a global event. It was personal. It was my sister, my family, my world. I needed to know. I needed to see. Was she truly gone? Or was there a chance, a sliver of hope, that she had escaped, that she was alive somewhere, fighting? But the steel door was unyielding, the padlock strong, and behind it a growing chorus of moans told me that whatever was inside, it was no longer human. I turned, my eyes scanning the darkness, the abandoned cars, the distant glow of the city's burning heart. My car. I had to get back to my car, to keep moving. But where? What was the point? The bite on my shoulder throbbed with renewed intensity. A chill spread through my body, not from the cold night air, but from within. Was it starting? Was the unstoppable virus finally claiming me too? I stumbled, a wave of dizziness washing over me. The bat slipped from my grasp, hitting the concrete with a dull thud. I looked at my hand. My fingers were trembling. The skin felt clammy. And in the fading light, I thought I saw a faint, dark discoloration around the wound on my shoulder. My breathing grew shallow. My vision swam. The world began to tilt. The moans from inside the shelter grew louder, closer, more insistent. They knew I was out here. They were waiting. I had to run. I had to get away. But my legs felt like lead. My head swam. Was this the end? Was this the final, inevitable triumph of the airborne plague, the final step in the global extinction it had so ruthlessly pursued? I could feel it now, a creeping numbness in my arm, a subtle shift in my perception. The fear was still there, but it was distant, muted, and in its place, a strange, profound hunger began to stir. A hunger not for food, but for something else, something raw, something primal. My eyes flickered to the metal door, to the source of the moans. They were calling to me. Were they calling for me? Or was I just starting to understand their language? I pressed my hand against my throbbing shoulder, against the spreading chill, against the terrifying nascent hunger. My eyes widened in horror. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not now. I had to fight it. I had to. But how do you fight something that has already consumed the world? How do you fight the unstoppable? The answer, a chilling whisper in my fading consciousness, was simple. You don't.
You become a part of it. The darkness threatened to swallow me whole. My vision blurred, my legs buckled, and as I fell, the last thing I heard was the triumphant, welcoming chorus of the moaning dead and the insidious whisper of a new, horrifying hunger. The world swam back into focus, not as a gentle awakening, but as a violent jolt. My head slammed against something hard, cold concrete. A sharp pain lanced through my skull, chasing away the lingering haze of unconsciousness. My eyes snapped open, blinking against the oppressive darkness. I was lying on my back, the rough texture of the ground pressing into my skin. The air was frigid, damp, and smelled of earth, mildew, and that unmistakable sweet and sour odor of the infected. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to orient myself, to piece together the fractured memories. The community center, the storm shelter door, the bite, the spreading chill, the hunger. Oh God, the hunger. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest, every joint a grinding agony. My shoulder still throbbed, a dull, relentless ache,
but the searing pain was gone. The coldness I'd felt before, the creeping numbness, was still there, a constant companion. But the hunger, it was different now. Not just a vague sense of unease, but a gnawing emptiness in my gut, a craving that twisted my insides. My hands flew to my neck, checking for any telltale signs. No unnatural stiffness, no gaping wounds. I ran a trembling hand over my face. My skin felt normal, cold, clammy, but not gray, not decaying. I checked my pulse, fast, irregular, but there. My vision was still blurry at the edges, my head pounding. I needed light. I patted my pockets, my fingers brushing against the worn plastic of my phone. A miracle, still with me. I fumbled for the power button, held my breath. The screen flickered to life, a blinding rectangle of light in the absolute blackness. 3% battery. Not much, but enough. The weak beam cut through the gloom, revealing my surroundings. I was in a small, cramped room, no bigger than a closet. Concrete walls, a low ceiling, no windows. A single heavy metal door, padlocked from the outside. A cell, my mind screamed, but my throat was dry, raw. I couldn't vocalize it. They locked me in. The realization was a fresh wave of terror, cold and absolute. Someone had found me, perhaps after I'd fallen, assumed the worst, assumed I was one of them, or becoming one, and locked me away. My eyes darted around the small space. A dusty blanket lay in a corner, a rusty bucket, likely a makeshift toilet, and a single small vent high up on the wall, emitting a faint, stale gust of air. Through that vent, I could hear it. The low, guttural moans. The shuffling. The distant, relentless thud of bodies against something solid. They were outside, and I was inside, a prisoner of the dying world. My phone battery flickered, a stark warning. I had to be quick. I aimed the beam at my shoulder, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My jacket was ripped, the fabric torn away. Beneath it, a dark, bruised bite mark, the skin around it a sickly purple bray. But no fresh blood. It looked old, scabbed over. How long had I been out? A day? 2? More? The hunger twisted in my gut. My head throbbed. The disorientation was profound. I still felt wrong, different. But was it the virus taking hold, or just the trauma, the exhaustion, the utter despair of waking up in a cage after everything? I had to get out. I aimed the phone's light at the metal door, scanning for weaknesses. Solid steel, heavy hinges, and a formidable padlock, a rusted behemoth that looked impervious to anything short of a cutting torch. Think, Alex, think! My mind felt sluggish, slow. The hunger was a constant, insistent static in my thoughts. I pressed my ear against the cold metal. The moans were closer here, clearer. And there was another sound, a soft, rhythmic scratching, like nails on stone. Was someone else in here? No, the room was too small. Then I realized it wasn't in here. It was outside, right outside the door, and it was scratching, trying to get in. My breath hitched. They knew I was here. Or they just sensed a living presence. The air from the vent felt colder now, laden with their scent. I pulled back from the door, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was a nightmare within a nightmare, locked in while they scratched at the door. I was bait, or a ticking time bomb. My phone flickered again, 2% battery. I had to conserve it. I killed the light, plunging the cell back into absolute darkness. The sudden absence of light intensified my other senses. The cold, the damp, the smell, and the sound of the scratching growing louder, more urgent. "Hello?" I rasped, my voice barely a croak. It hurt to speak. My throat was like sandpaper. "Is anyone out there?" The scratching stopped. For a moment, a terrifying silence. Then a low, guttural growl right outside the door. And then a series of frantic thuds, as if something was slamming its body against the metal. They heard me. They reacted to the sound, just like the others. This was bad, very bad. I pressed myself against the farthest wall, trying to disappear into the shadows. My hands trembled, my shoulder throbbed. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by another surge of that strange hunger. What if I was turning? What if I was already beyond saving? What if the person who locked me in here was right? The thought was a chilling possibility. If I was a danger, then being locked away was a mercy. A mercy for those outside, anyway. But I couldn't accept it. Not yet. Not without a fight. Sarah, she was my reason. My last shred of humanity. If she was out there, alive, she needed me. And if she wasn't, then I had to know. I had to find out what happened. The scratching resumed, methodical now, accompanied by a soft, wet, snuffling sound from beneath the door. Was it trying to smell me? To find a weakness? I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Panic wouldn't help. I needed to observe, to listen, to understand. The quality of the moans outside the cell seemed to vary. Some were low, dragging. Others were higher-pitched, more frantic. The fast ones, the slow ones, the sheer numbers. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. The words were a bitter truth in the darkness. No one was coming to open this door. I had to do it myself. But how? I was unarmed, weak, disoriented, and possibly infected. My fingers brushed against something on the floor beside me, small, metallic. I fumbled in the darkness, my fingers closing around a cold, smooth object. I brought it closer to my face, squinting in the absolute blackness. A small, bent paperclip. A paperclip! A useless relic from a forgotten office desk. What could I do with a paperclip against a steel door and a massive padlock? Then a memory surfaced. A conversation with my grandfather years ago when I was just a kid. He'd been a locksmith in his youth, and he'd shown me how to pick a simple lock with a paperclip and a tension wrench. It was a parlor trick, a fun diversion. Now it was my only hope. I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and clinical. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble. But I had to try, for Sarah, for myself, for the small flickering flame of humanity that still burned within me, despite the hunger, despite the cold, despite the terrifying possibility that I was already lost. My phone battery died with a soft ping, plunging the cell into absolute, unforgiving darkness. The scratching outside the door intensified, accompanied by a new sound, a low, rhythmic growl right outside my ear. It was closer, much closer, and the smell of decay was overpowering. I had to work fast. I had to try. My trembling fingers began to bend the paperclip, shaping it into the rudimentary tools I remembered my grandfather using. The silence, broken only by the growling and scratching, was a suffocating shroud, and I knew with a chilling certainty that whatever was on the other side of that door, it wasn't going to wait much longer. My fight for survival was far from over. It was merely entering its most desperate phase. The darkness was absolute, pressing in on me like a physical weight. My fingers, surprisingly steady despite the rapid-fire drumming of my heart, worked on the paperclip. The metal was thin, flimsy, a pathetic instrument against the unforgiving reality of a solid steel padlock. But it was all I had. The rhythmic scratching and guttural growling from beyond the door were a constant, terrifying soundtrack to my desperate efforts. It sounded like more than one of them now, a chorus of impatient hunger. I remembered grandfather's words. "Patience, Alex. Feel the tumblers. Don't force it." My fingers, guided by instinct and a desperate prayer, probed the keyhole. The tiny, bent tip of the paperclip slid into the mechanism, cold and alien. I could feel the individual pins, small obstacles in my path to freedom. The hunger in my stomach intensified, a burning void that threatened to consume my focus. My shoulder ached, a deep, persistent throb that resonated with the gnawing emptiness inside me. Was this the infection? Was it slowly eroding my humanity, replacing my fear with a primal urge? I pushed the thought down, forced it away. Not now. Survive first, then question. I pressed the tension wrench, another piece of bent paperclip, against the bottom of the keyhole, applying delicate, constant pressure. The growling outside escalated, a low, collective rumble. They were getting agitated. They could smell me. They knew I was here, a trapped meal. My fingers moved with agonizing slowness, trying to feel for the subtle clicks of the tumblers falling into place. One. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper of metal. Two. A slightly more distinct sound. Sweat beaded on my forehead, trickling into my eyes. I blinked, trying to clear my vision in the impenetrable blackness. A heavy thud against the door. The entire cell shuddered. Plaster dust rained down from the ceiling, stinging my eyes. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Had they broken through? Was this the end? Another thud, harder this time, then another, and another, a relentless battering. The metal groaned in protest, a long, drawn-out shriek that sent shivers down my spine. The padlock, my only barrier, looked impossible to breach from their side. But the door itself, it was only so strong. "Come on," I whispered, my voice hoarse, a plea to the inanimate lock. "Just a few more." My fingers continued their delicate dance. 3, 4. The pins were stubborn, resistant. My concentration was absolute, every nerve ending focused on the infinitesimal movements within the lock. The thudding grew louder, more frantic, interspersed with frustrated snarls and the wet, tearing sounds of desperate attempts to claw at the steel. Suddenly, a loud clang. My fingers twitched, sending the paperclip slipping. I cursed under my breath, my frustration boiling. The noise had come from inside the cell. My heart hammered. I strained my ears, listening intently. Nothing. Just the continued assault on the door. What had fallen? I checked the cell when I first woke up. It was empty. My hand reached out, groping in the dark, searching for whatever had caused the sound. My fingers brushed against something cold, hard, and metallic. It was lying on the floor, near where I'd been slumped earlier. I picked it up. It was small, heavy for its size, and strangely smooth. I brought it closer to my face, feeling its contours. A small, decorative keychain, a metal charm shaped like a miniature school bus, and attached to it, a single brass key. My blood ran cold. The school bus. Sarah. She used to have a keychain just like this, a gift from her students. It was hers. The realization was a punch to the gut, a wave of gut-wrenching grief. This wasn't just a cell. This was her cell. She had been here, locked in here, just like me. And this key? I fumbled with the key, my fingers trembling so violently I almost dropped it. The brass key. The key to this padlock. My grandfather's lockpicking lesson, suddenly, terrifyingly irrelevant. The key was here all along, and she had left it. For me? For anyone? Or had it just fallen from her pocket? A cruel joke of fate. Another deafening thud against the door, and the sound of splintering wood. The barricade on their side was failing. I could hear them straining, pushing. Time was running out. I jammed the brass key into the padlock, ignoring the frantic thudding, ignoring the hunger, ignoring everything but the desperate need to escape. The key slid in smoothly. It fit. I turned it. A satisfying click echoed in the small cell, a sound of triumph, a sound of dread. The padlock sprang open, falling to the concrete floor with a heavy clatter that was instantly swallowed by the roar of the infected. The door burst inward. They were there, dozens of them, a heaving, moaning mass of gray flesh and grasping hands. The air was instantly filled with the stench of decay, a suffocating miasma that made me gag. Their dead eyes, some milky, some bloodshot, all fixed on me, the living thing, the source of the fresh scent. I scrambled backward, pressing myself against the farthest wall, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The baseball bat. Where was the baseball bat? It was still outside, by the storm shelter door. I was unarmed, and they were coming. The first one stumbled into the cell, a hulking figure in what looked like a janitor's uniform, its face a gaping maw of ruined flesh. It lunged, its arms outstretched, its fingers skeletal claws. My mind went blank. Pure animalistic terror seized me. I had nowhere to go, no weapon, no escape. This was it. The global extinction had finally caught up to me. But then, as the janitor infected reached for me, a strange sensation washed over me. Not fear, not pain, something else. A surge of strength, a clarity of thought, and the hunger intensified. Not a hollow ache, but a powerful, overriding craving. My body moved without conscious thought. I ducked under the janitor's grasping hands, a sudden explosive burst of speed that surprised even me. My shoulder, which had been throbbing seconds ago, felt strangely numb, almost powerful. My muscles, previously leaden, were now coiled and ready. I didn't think, I reacted. I grabbed the janitor infected by its torn collar, a desperate guttural growl escaping my own throat. The smell of its rotten flesh, previously repulsive, now held a strange magnetic quality, a different kind of hunger, a predatory hunger. I shoved it backward, using a strength I didn't know I possessed. It stumbled, falling into the mass behind it. The impact sent a ripple through the crowd. I didn't wait. I scrambled out of the cell, pushing past the momentarily disoriented infected, their moans now sounding like a furious cacophony. I was outside, in the basement of the community center. But it was no less a nightmare. More of them were here, a swirling vortex of gray, decaying flesh. And amidst them, I saw it, the baseball bat, lying by the foot of the stairwell where I dropped it, maybe 20 feet away. My eyes scanned the room, the stairwell, the bat, the sheer number of infected. My mind, previously sluggish, was now calculating, processing, faster than it ever had before. The hunger was a roaring inferno in my gut, driving me, pushing me forward. I lunged for the bat, a low snarl escaping my lips. My movement was swift, precise. I dodged a grasping hand, ducked under a snapping jaw, felt the wind of another infected's lunge against my cheek. My body felt light, powerful, unburdened by fear, fueled by a terrible, undeniable urge. My fingers closed around the smooth wood of the bat. It felt right in my hand, balanced, deadly. I spun, swinging wide, the bat connecting with a sickening crunch against the skull of an approaching infected. It dropped, its head a pulpy mess. Another swung, its body moving with a speed and ferocity that mimicked the fast ones from the highway. My eyes tracked it, my body already anticipating its next move. I swung again, a clean, powerful arc, catching it in the temple. It went down. I was moving, fighting, not just defending myself, but attacking. The rage, the grief, the hunger, it was all coalescing into a focused, brutal energy. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps, but it wasn't fear, it was exertion. I fought my way up the stairs, each step a desperate climb, each swing of the bat a blow against the encroaching darkness. They were everywhere, coming from every direction, but I was faster, stronger, more focused, and the hunger was a consuming fire, giving me an almost supernatural clarity. I reached the top of the stairwell, bursting through a swinging door and into the main hall of the community center. It was a scene of utter devastation. Chairs overturned, tables smashed, papers strewn everywhere. And everywhere, them. Dozens, hundreds, a sea of shuffling, moaning bodies. And in the center of the hall, near the stage, I saw her, Sarah. She was standing there, facing away from me, her back to the wall, surrounded by them. Her familiar green sweater, torn and streaked with dirt. Her hair, usually neatly tied back, now wild and disheveled. "Sarah!" I screamed, my voice raw, breaking. The sound was ripped from my gut, a desperate cry. She turned, and my world shattered. Her eyes were milky, unfocused. Her jaw hung slack. Her skin, usually vibrant, was a sallow gray. She was one of them. The virus, airborne and unstoppable, had claimed her too. The keychain, the cell, it all made sense now. She had turned, and they had locked her away. The bat slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the floor. The hunger, the rage, the newfound strength, it all evaporated, replaced by a devastating, soul-crushing despair. My sister, gone, lost to the unstoppable tide. The infected, sensing my sudden weakness, surged forward, their moans growing into a deafening chorus. Sarah, the thing that had been Sarah, took a step towards me, her arms outstretched, her empty eyes fixed on my face. She was not Sarah. She was a monster, a hungry, broken thing. Tears streamed down my face, hot and agonizing, cutting clean paths through the grime and sweat. This was global extinction. Not just the death of billions, but the death of everything that mattered. The death of hope. The death of family. The death of self. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Let them take me. Let the hunger consume me. Let the unstoppable virus finish its work. What was there left to fight for? What was there left to survive for? But as her cold, dead fingers brushed my cheek, something within me snapped. Not surrender, something else, something primal. The hunger, long suppressed, roared back to life, more powerful than ever. And as I opened my eyes, a chilling realization dawned. Maybe, just maybe, the unstoppable virus hadn't claimed me yet. Maybe, in its terrible grasp, it had transformed me. And maybe, to survive in this new, brutal world, I had to become something else. Something just as dangerous. Something that could understand the hunger. Something that could fight fire with fire. The moaning continued, but now it almost sounded familiar. And the world, utterly destroyed, waited for my answer. The touch of her cold, dead fingers on my cheek was a shock that ripped through the fog of grief, an icy realization sharper than any blade. This wasn't Sarah. This was it. The thing that had consumed my sister, the virus that had rendered global extinction unstoppable, now standing inches from my face, reaching for me. And in that agonizing second, as her empty eyes stared into mine, I saw a flicker of something new within myself. Not the despair, not the crushing sorrow, but a cold, calculating fury. The hunger in my gut roared, a primal beast unleashed. It wasn't the slow, creeping malaise I'd felt earlier. This was a volcanic eruption, transforming every cell in my body, sharpening my senses, igniting an instinct for survival that dwarfed all other emotions. My vision, previously blurred by tears, snapped into hyper-focus. Her dead eyes, the minute twitch in her jaw, the way the other infected were swaying, drawing closer. Every detail was magnified, screaming for immediate, brutal action. The bat lay on the floor, forgotten. But my hands clenched into fists, muscles coiling, ready to strike. I met her gaze, not with fear, but with a fierce, untamed resolve. This wasn't just a fight for my life. This was a fight for her memory, for the last shred of my humanity that refused to become like her. "No," I growled, the sound ripped from my throat, guttural and raw. It wasn't a word of denial, it was a declaration of war. I didn't step back, I lunged forward, not towards her, but past her, a blur of motion. My new, terrifying speed propelled me through the thickest part of the horde, a human projectile fueled by a terrifying cocktail of grief and the raw, unholy hunger that pulsed within me. They reached for me, dozens of grasping hands, but I was too fast, too agile. I ducked, weaved, spun, my body moving with an unnatural grace, my awareness of their movements almost prescient. Each near miss was a surge of adrenaline, each step a testament to this horrifying transformation. My target, a fire axe, mounted on the wall near a rusted fire extinguisher case, its gleaming red handle a stark contrast against the faded yellow paint. It was a tool of destruction, and I needed it. The infected in my path became obstacles, not threats. I slammed into one, a corpulent man whose uniform indicated he might have been a chef. His rotten flesh gave way with a sickening squelch, sending him toppling into the masses behind him. I used his collapsing weight as leverage, propelling myself forward, closer to the axe. A scream ripped from one of them, one of the faster ones, the evolved strain.
It lunged, a desperate, rapid sprint that put it directly in my path. Its sharpened teeth glinted in the dim, dusty light filtering through the high windows. But I saw it coming. My new senses, heightened and primal, registered its every twitch, its every muscle contraction. I didn't dodge. I met it head on. My shoulder, the one that bore the dog's bite, slammed into its chest. The impact was jarring, bone-shattering. I felt a rib crack, not in my body, but in its. The infected wheezed, a pathetic sound of forced air, and crumpled to the ground, momentarily stunned. I didn't stop. I stepped over its convulsing body, my eyes fixed on the axe. Closer, almost there. Hands, so many hands, clawed at my clothes, my skin. I felt sharp nails rake my back, tearing fabric, drawing blood. But the pain was distant, almost an afterthought, consumed by the roaring inferno of the hunger. It felt like I was wearing an invisible armor, a shield of pure, focused intent. My hand closed around the cold, heavy handle of the axe. It was solid, real, a potent extension of my rage. I yanked it from the wall, the old mounting bracket groaning, then tearing free with a shriek of metal. I spun, the axe a terrifying arc of steel. The first swing was a wild, desperate cleave that took off the head of a shambling female infected. Her body dropped, spurting black fluid, but the other infected barely reacted, simply stepping over her, eyes fixed on me. My gaze swept the room, my new vision piercing through the chaos. I saw Sarah again, or the thing that had been Sarah. Her head tilted, that same unnatural, hungry gaze. She was part of this unstoppable tide, and the realization hardened my resolve. I couldn't save her, but I could avenge her. What would you have done? I still don't know if I made the right choice, but in that moment, it felt like the only one. The axe was heavy, yet felt balanced in my hands.
Each swing was deliberate, powerful. I targeted heads, knowing that was the only way to truly stop them. The sound of blade meeting bone, the wet thud of falling bodies, it became a gruesome rhythm, a dance of death. I was moving towards the double doors of the community center, the very doors that had been chained shut, my escape route. I carved a bloody path through the horde, my shirt torn, my face streaked with sweat and grime, my shoulder a dull, thrumming ache. But I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel weak. The hunger fueled me, giving me endless reserves of brutal energy. The sheer numbers were overwhelming, however. For every one I dropped, two more seemed to take its place, emerging from the depths of the community center, drawn by the sounds of conflict, the scent of the living. The global extinction was a persistent, relentless force. I reached the double doors. The heavy chains that had secured them were broken, snapped from their mountains, lying twisted on the floor like discarded snakes. The door itself was splintered, a clear sign they had breached it from the outside, only to be drawn back into the building by the noise and life within. I burst through the doors and into the cool night air. The parking lot was a graveyard of abandoned cars, and beyond it, the residential street was eerily quiet, shrouded in darkness. The moon, a pale sliver, cast long, distorted shadows. But the silence was deceptive. From the distance, the omnipresent moan of the city was still there, a chilling reminder of the scale of this catastrophe. And closer, barely audible, I heard a new sound, a whimper, a soft, desperate whimper. My head snapped towards the sound. It was coming from one of the abandoned cars in the parking lot, a small, dark sedan, its windows tinted. My gut clenched. The hunger, the primal, predatory part of my brain screamed at me to keep moving, to escape, to leave the sound behind. It could be a trap. It could be another infected animal. Or worse, a human, broken and desperate, who would be more dangerous than any monster. But another part of me, a small, stubborn ember of my old self, rebelled. A whimper, a desperate sound. It could be a child. What would Sarah have done? The question, clear as a bell, cut through the hunger, through the rage. She would have helped. She would have tried. I hesitated, the axe heavy in my hand. The low growl in my chest fought against the desperate whimper. My new, enhanced senses were picking up more. A faint, human scent from the car. And something else, a tremor, a tremble, fear. I looked back at the community center. The infected were spilling out, a slow, dark tide, drawn by my exit, by the sounds of my struggle. They were coming for me. Time was running out. My decision was made. I moved, not towards the street, but towards the abandoned sedan. The axe felt lighter now, a tool for rescue, not just destruction. The hunger was still there, a burning ember, but it was momentarily subdued by something else, something human. I approached the car cautiously, my axe held ready. The whimpering continued, soft and sporadic. I peered through the tinted window. Inside, huddled in the back seat, was a small, shaken figure, a child. No older than 5 or 6, tangled in a blanket, tears silently streaming down their face. My heart ached. The sheer innocence of the scene, amidst the brutal reality of global extinction, was a powerful, heartbreaking contrast. This child had seen too much, lost too much. I tried the door handle. Locked, of course. I tapped gently on the window, trying to appear non-threatening, a desperate attempt at reassurance in a world that offered none. The child flinched, burying their face deeper into the blanket. "Hey," I whispered, my voice rough but trying to be gently. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." They didn't respond, just whimpered, a small, broken sound. The moans from the community center were growing louder, closer. The horde was almost at the edge of the parking lot. I had precious seconds. I had to break the window. It would make noise. It would attract them, but I had no choice. "I'm gonna break the window, okay?" I said, my voice barely audible. "It's gonna be loud, but I need to get you out." The child didn't respond. I took a deep breath, raised the axe, and with a guttural roar, brought it down on the window. The glass exploded inward with a deafening crash, showering the interior with glittering shards. The sound was a siren call. The moans from the community center instantly changed pitch, escalating into a frenzy. The horde surged forward, now running, a terrifying wave of hunger and death. I reached into the car, carefully brushing away the broken glass, trying to avoid cutting the child. They flinched away, terrified. "Come on," I urged, my voice laced with urgency. "You have to come with me, now." The child recoiled, pressing themselves against the far side of the seat. They were paralyzed by fear, and I was running out of time. The infected were almost upon me, their frantic moans filling the night. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. The child, so small, so fragile, was a living testament to the world's brutal end. But they were also a reason to fight, a reason to keep going, a reason to cling to the last vestiges of humanity. I reached in, grabbing the child gently but firmly, pulling them out of the shattered window. They screamed, a high-pitched, piercing sound that cut through the cacophony of the infected. "I've got you," I murmured, clutching the child tightly against my chest. The small, warm body, a strange comfort amidst the cold, predatory hunger that still burned within me. The horde was mere feet away. Their stench was overwhelming. Their grasping hands were almost within reach. I had the child, I had the axe, but I was surrounded. And the street, my escape route, was still a terrifying distance away. My enhanced senses told me they were faster now, hungrier, and I was holding a screaming child. The night was about to swallow us whole, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was gonna be the longest, most desperate fight of my transformed life. The child's screams were a raw, piercing sound that cut through the night, a beacon for every infected horror within a mile. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs, echoing the terrifying beat of the approaching horde. The cold, calculating fury that had fueled my escape from the community center was now battling a fresh wave of primal terror. This wasn't just my life at stake anymore. It was this innocent, terrified child's. I clutched the boy. It was a boy, small and wiry, tightly to my chest, shielding his face against my shoulder. The broken glass from the car window crunched under my feet as I pivoted, the fire axe now held defensively, a heavy, unwieldy weight in my transformed hand. The infected were a solid wall of graying flesh and grasping limbs, surging forward. The scent of decay, once merely repulsive, now carried a strange, intoxicating edge to my heightened senses, almost a promise of something. I fought the urge to recoil, to succumb to the instinct to feed that warred within me. "Hold on," I whispered to the child, my voice a strained growl. He was shaking uncontrollably, his small hands clutching my shirt as if I were his only anchor in a storm. And perhaps I was. The first of them, a lean, fast one with half its jaw missing, lunged. Its shriek was a banshee's wail, a sound of pure malice. I didn't think. My body reacted, a blur of motion. I shifted my weight, bringing the axe up in a sweeping arc that caught the infected in the chest. The impact was visceral, a sickening crunch of bone and rotten tissue. It stumbled, wheezing, and I followed through with another strike, embedding the blade deep into its skull. It dropped, a twitching heap of gore. But there were others, so many others. They flowed around the fallen, their dead eyes fixed on us, their moans a deafening chorus of hunger. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. Each fallen soldier, each devoured civilian, each dead animal added to their numbers. They were the world now. I backed away, towards the open street, my gaze sweeping for an escape route. The small boy, still whimpering against my chest, felt lighter, almost insubstantial, as if my own enhanced strength negated his weight. This new strength, this terrifying hunger, it was a double-edged sword. It allowed me to fight, to move, to survive, but it also whispered dark temptations, blurred the line between hunter and hunted. "We need to get to the car," I muttered, my voice rough. The sedan, it was still there, but getting to it meant crossing a small patch of open grass, and the horde was already filling that space. A thought, cold and desperate, flashed through my mind. The noise. I needed a distraction, something loud. Something that would draw them away, even for a few precious seconds. My eyes fell on a red, rusted dumpster, overflowing with garbage, near the edge of the parking lot. Heavy, metallic, and filled with bottles and cans. A perfect noise bomb. "Stay with me," I growled at the boy, and he nodded, a tiny, jerky movement against my shoulder. His whimpering had subsided to silent tears, a testament to his terror, or perhaps his fading hope. I sprinted, axe held high, cutting a path towards the dumpster. The axe was a blur of motion, dispatching two more infected with brutal efficiency. The sounds of their bodies hitting the ground, the wet thud of my axe, blended with the boy's muffled sobs and the relentless moans of the horde. I reached the dumpster, a towering hulk of rusted steel. Its lid was partially open, revealing a cavern of refuse. No time for finesse. I dropped the axe for a split second, pushed the boy onto a small ledge on the side of the dumpster, then grasped the edge of the lid with both hands. With a surge of raw, primal strength, I yanked it open, slamming it back against the wall of a nearby building. The crash was deafening, a monstrous clang of metal against concrete that echoed through the quiet night. bottles shattered, cans clattered. The sound was immense, overwhelming, a discordant symphony of chaos. The effect was instantaneous. The infected, previously focused solely on us, collectively turned their heads towards the source of the noise. Their moans faltered, then escalated into a new frenzied chorus of agitated confusion. They shuffled, they lurched, they streamed towards the dumpster, drawn like moths to a flame. "Now!" I screamed, grabbing the boy and pulling him down from the ledge, clutching him again to my chest. I snatched up the axe, my fingers closing around the worn handle, and sprinted for the car. The sedan was maybe 30 feet away, a dark silhouette against the glow of the distant city fires. 30 feet of open ground, now momentarily clear of the densest part of the horde. It felt like a mile. My legs pumped, muscles burning, but the hunger, that terrifying, exhilarating hunger, pushed me onward. The boy was light in my arms, his small body pressed against mine, his rapid heartbeat a fragile rhythm against my own. I reached the car, fumbled for the door handle. Still locked. Damn it, I didn't have time. The infected were already turning, their primitive minds recalibrating, realizing the true source of the living scent. Their moans were growing louder again, closer. With a desperate cry, I brought the butt of the axe down on the rear window of the sedan. Glass exploded inward, showering the interior. I threw the boy through the opening, pushing him into the back seat. "Stay down."
"Don't make a sound." I scrambled in after him, the jagged edges of the broken window tearing at my clothes, scraping my skin. My enhanced senses registered the approaching horde, the ground shaking with their collective shambling weight. They were seconds away. I was in the car, safe for now. I slammed the passenger door shut, the familiar thud a comforting sound. My breath came in ragged gasps, but the hunger still raged, a furnace in my gut. The boy was huddled in the back seat, a small, trembling bundle of fear. His eyes, wide and terrified, met mine in the dim light. My mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. She told me to hide." My heart, that fragile ember of my humanity, ached. Another one, another child orphaned by the unstoppable plague. "It's okay," I said, my voice rough. "We're going to find her, or we're going to get somewhere safe." A lie. I knew it was a lie. There was no safe. Not anymore. Not in a world consumed by global extinction. But I had to say it. For him. For the last shred of my own humanity. My eyes scanned the interior of the car. Keys. I needed the keys. The owner, whoever they were, had clearly abandoned it in a hurry. I searched the dashboard, the center console, the sun visors. Nothing. The side of the car rocked violently. A hand, gray and skeletal, slammed against the window, leaving a grotesque smear. Then another, and another. They were here, surrounding the car. Their moans were deafening, pressing in on us from all sides. "The keys," I muttered, my voice desperate. "Where are the damn keys?" The boy pointed, a small trembling finger towards the floor, under the driver's seat. "There," he whispered. She dropped them." I reached, fumbling blindly in the darkness, my fingers brushing against lint and debris. And then the cold, smooth metal, a ring of keys. My heart leaped. I gripped them, shoved the main key into the ignition, turned it. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life, a beautiful, violent sound that cut through the moans of the infected.
The car lurched forward, rocking violently as I slammed it into reverse, then into drive. The tire spun, squealing against the asphalt, then bit, sending the car lurching forward, smashing through the wall of infected. Bodies flew, glass shattered. The car groaned under the impacts, but it was moving. We were moving. I sped out of the parking lot, leaving the screaming horde behind, the dumpster still clanging, the community center a dark, desolate monument to a lost world. The street was empty, a dark ribbon winding into the unknown. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The boy, silent now, had curled into a tight ball in the back seat. He was safe, for now. But the global extinction was still out there. It was everywhere, and the hunger, that primal, terrifying hunger, was still a raging inferno within me. It felt like I had traded one prison for another, the cell for this new, terrifying form of existence. And I knew with a chilling certainty that this fragile alliance of my humanity and my monster would be tested again and again in the unforgiving crucible of the dying world. My journey and his had just begun. The city fell away behind us, a dying ember against the pre-dawn sky. Columns of smoke, black and greasy, reached for the stars, painting a grotesque mural of the end times. The further we drove, the more the infected thinned out, replaced by the eerie silence of abandoned homes and empty fields. My grip on the steering wheel was ironclad, my eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the endless dark road ahead. The boy, whose name I now knew was Ben, had fallen into a fitful sleep in the back seat, his soft, even breaths a fragile counterpoint to the thunder of my own heart. The hunger was a dull, constant ache now, a low thrum beneath my skin. It was still there, an insidious whisper, but it was controllable, for now. The adrenaline from the escape had begun to recede, leaving me with a profound exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. My shoulder throbbed, a relentless reminder of the dog's bite and the source of this terrifying transformation. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. The words resonated with a new, horrifying intimacy. It wasn't just a pathogen, it was an evolutionary force, shaping not just the dead, but also, perhaps, the living. What was I becoming? A new variant? A hybrid? The thought made my skin crawl, yet a strange, cold fascination accompanied it. The fuel gauge was dangerously low again, the needle dancing on the E. We couldn't stop, not yet. Not while the memory of the city and the horrors it contained was still so fresh. I needed to get Ben further away, to somewhere that felt, even deceptively, safe. My mind raced, sifting through the chaotic memories of the last few days. Sarah had often talked about a cabin deep in the Appalachian foothills, owned by an old college friend of hers. Remote, isolated, defensible. It was a long shot, hundreds of miles away, but it was the only direction that offered even a sliver of hope. And most importantly, it was away from the dense population centers where the airborne virus had wrought its most devastating work. Cabin, I muttered, the word tasting like a forgotten dream. The first rays of dawn began to paint the horizon in bruised purples and blood oranges, revealing a world scarred and broken. Abandoned cars lined the highway. Some rusted hulks, others recently deserted, their doors ajar, personal effects scattered on the pavement, each one a silent testament to a desperate flight that had ended in failure. We passed a gas station, its convenience store windows smashed, its pumps dry. No, that wasn't an option. I needed to find a fuel tanker or a large, secluded industrial depot, something that wouldn't have been picked clean. A small sign, faded and leaning, caught my eye. Whispering Pines Campground, 10 miles, and beneath it, General Store. A campground, rural, isolated. It might have a small cache of gas, or at least some supplies. It was a detour, a risk, but my options were narrowing. The sun was rising, and with it, the threat of daytime activity for the infected. While the night brought its own terrors, the light of day exposed you, stripped away the comforting shroud of darkness. I turned off the highway, the tires crunching on gravel as the sedan bumped onto a narrow, unpaved road. The trees, thick and ancient, rose on either side, their branches interwoven, forming a dark, watchful tunnel. The air here was cooler, cleaner, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the acrid stench of the city. Ben stirred in the back, a soft whimper escaping his lips. "Mommy," he mumbled, his eyes still closed. My heart clenched. "She'll be okay," I said, the lie tasting like ash. "We're almost there." The road twisted and turned, climbing steadily into the foothills. The trees grew denser, their shadows longer, darker. The silence was profound, broken only by the hum of the engine and the distant caw of a crow. It felt like we were entering a different world, a primordial landscape untouched by the chaos of global extinction. A dangerous illusion. Suddenly, the road opened up into a clearing. Before us lay Whispering Pines Campground. It wasn't the bustling hub of activity I remembered from old brochures. It was desolate, empty, a ghost town of empty RV pads and deserted cabins. And in the center, the General Store. A single-story log cabin, its porch sagging, its windows dark. The pumps out front looked ancient, rusted. A slim chance, a desperate gamble. I killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening. My hand went to the axe, tucked into the passenger footwell. I needed it, needed the feel of its weight, its cold, brutal promise. "Ben," I whispered, reaching back to gently shake his shoulder. "Wake up, we're here." His eyes fluttered open, wide and unfocused, then sharpened as he took in the desolate scene. He didn't speak, just clutched my hand, his small fingers surprisingly strong. "Stay here," I said, my voice low and firm. "Stay in the car. Keep the doors locked. If anything happens, if anything comes, you hide. Understand?" He nodded, his lower lip trembling. The terror was still etched on his small face. I opened the car door with agonizing slowness, the creak of the hinge echoing in the oppressive quiet. The air outside was cold, crisp, carrying the scent of pine and a faint, acrid smell I couldn't quite place. My enhanced senses were on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, amplified. The hunger, though subdued, was still there, a low growl in the back of my mind. I moved towards the General Store, the axe held ready. My footsteps crunched on the gravel, each sound amplified in the stillness. The store's front door was ajar, hanging crookedly on one hinge, a dark, gaping maw. I pushed it open further with the butt of my axe, peering inside. The interior was a shambles, shelves overturned, goods scattered across the floor, a scene of frantic looting, or a violent struggle, or both. The acrid smell was stronger here, something sweet, something chemical, and something else, something utterly repulsive. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the gloom. The store was dark, lit only by the faint light filtering through the grimy windows. Dust motes danced in the sparse beams, giving the air a hazy, ethereal quality. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing strangely in the stillness. Silence, only the faint creak of the floorboards beneath my weight. I moved deeper into the store, my axe held high. The aisles were narrow, choked with debris. Empty snack wrappers, smashed jars, overturned display racks, a testament to human desperation. Then I saw it. In the back, near the counter, a figure, small, huddled, still. My heart leaped, then clenched. Was it a survivor, or one of them? I approached cautiously, my enhanced senses straining for any sign of movement, any change in the air. The figure was slumped against a stack of canned goods, partially obscured by an overturned freezer. As I drew closer, the truth revealed itself. It was an elderly woman, her face pale and drawn, her clothes stained and torn. She was dead, not infected, just dead. Of hunger, of fear, of despair. In a world of global extinction, even the simple act of survival was a brutal lottery. My gaze drifted from her to the counter. The cash register was smashed, its drawer hanging open, empty. But behind the counter, on a shelf, sat a row of gas cans, 5 of them, all full. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Gas, fuel, a chance. But then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic, dripping sound, from somewhere behind the counter. My enhanced hearing focused. Drip, drip, drip. And with it, a faint, metallic odor, familiar and chilling. Blood. I raised my axe, my grip tightening. My eyes scanned the shadows behind the counter. This was too easy, too quiet. In a world overrun by the unstoppable, nothing was ever truly free. "Show yourself," I growled, my voice low, dangerous. The dripping stopped. The silence intensified. My every nerve ending screamed danger. Then a sudden, explosive crash from the far end of the store. A shelf loaded with canned goods toppled over, sending a cascade of metal and glass across the floor. My head snapped towards the sound, too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, not shambling, not running, but moving with a fluid, terrifying grace. It was tall, gaunt, its clothes little more than rags. Its skin was stretched tight over bone, a pallid canvas. And its eyes glowed with an eerie, emerald luminescence, fixed on me with an intelligent, predatory intensity. It wasn't like the others, not the slow ones, not even the fast ones. This was something new, something horrifyingly evolved, something that stood upright, surveyed its prey, and waited. And in its hand, a long, rusty machete. My blood ran cold. When the virus mutated airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. The words resonated with a fresh, sickening horror. The virus wasn't just reanimating the dead, it was improving them, creating new variants, smarter, deadlier. This was not a mindless predator. This was a hunter. And it was here, waiting in the darkness of the general store, ready to add me to the growing toll of this world's unstoppable end. My axe felt suddenly inadequate. My enhanced senses, my primal hunger, were they enough to face something like this? The chilling answer echoed in the silence. I had no idea. The emerald glow in its eyes was utterly mesmerizing, radiating an unnatural intelligence that sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. This wasn't just another infected. This was something beyond. Something that moved with a predatory grace, its skeletal frame belying a coiled power. Its machete, rusted and wickedly sharp, glinted menacingly in the dim light, a stark counterpoint to the dead world it inhabited. "Show yourself," I'd growled, a desperate, almost primal challenge. And it had answered, not with a roar, but with a calculated movement, emerging from the shadows like a wraith. The air around it felt colder, thinner, as if it sucked the warmth from the room. My enhanced senses, usually a source of advantage, were now overwhelmed. I could smell the decay, the metallic tang of old blood, the faint, sweet chemical scent of embalming fluid emanating from it. But there was something else, too. A faint, almost imperceptible scent of ozone, like static electricity. My heart hammered against my ribs, not just from fear, but from the deep, resonant thrum of the hunger that surged within me.
It battled against the terror, a furious maelstrom of conflicting instincts. To survive, to fight, to feed. "Who are you?" I rasped, my voice hoarse, desperate for a human answer from this inhuman thing. It tilted its head, a gesture unnervingly intelligent. No sound escaped its gaping mouth, but the emerald eyes seemed to bore into my very soul, a silent, chilling communication of intent. It raised the machete, not in a wild, furious swing, but in a slow, deliberate motion, testing its weight. This was a nightmare, evolved. The unstoppable virus wasn't just spreading, it was innovating, creating apex predators. The thought was a sickening blow. If creatures like this were roaming the wilds, then the small ember of hope I held for the cabin, for any remote sanctuary, was a cruel delusion. My gaze flickered to the gas cans behind the counter, 5 of them, life-sustaining fuel. But between me and them stood this thing. I tightened my grip on the axe, my knuckles white. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a fight for the future, for Ben, for any hope of continuing. It took a step, slow, deliberate, each movement a taunt. Its joints didn't creak. Its footfalls were unnervingly silent, almost floating across the debris-strewn floor. I lunged first, not out of bravery, but out of sheer, unadulterated terror. To wait was to die.
My axe swung in a wide, desperate arc, aimed directly at its head. The hunger screamed, pushing me forward, granting me a burst of savage speed. It moved with impossible swiftness, a blur of motion. It didn't dodge my axe, it simply melted away, sidestepping my attack with a fluid grace that was utterly inhuman. The machete was a flash of silver. I felt a searing pain as the blade raked across my arm, a shallow but burning cut that tore through my sleeve. I snarled, a low, animalistic sound, and spun, swinging the axe again, this time a backhand strike. It was faster, too fast. The machete blocked my attack with a clang of metal against metal, sparks flying in the dim light. The impact sent a shockwave up my arm, making my teeth ache. Its strength was incredible. Not the brute force of the shambling dead, but a precise, focused power. Its emerald eyes were fixed on mine, a silent challenge. And in that moment, I understood. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a dance, a deadly ballet between hunter and prey. What would you have done? Fought a monster that felt impossible to beat, or fled, abandoning your last hope for fuel? I couldn't flee. Ben was in the car. He needed the fuel. He needed me. I pressed the attack, a desperate flurry of swings, each one met by the machete with impossible speed and precision. Clang, clang, clang. The sounds echoed in the quiet store, a terrifying symphony of metal. My muscles burned, but the hunger, that relentless driving force, kept me going. It was toying with me. I saw it in the emerald eyes, a chilling flicker of something akin to amusement. It was testing me, learning my movements, waiting for an opening. I felt a sudden sharp pain in my leg. The machete, it had sliced through my jeans, leaving a burning gash on my thigh. Not deep, but enough to make me stumble, to briefly break my concentration. That was its opening. It lunged, a silent, deadly blur, the machete held high, aimed for my head. I saw it coming, a terrifying slow-motion tableau. The glint of the blade, the emerald eyes glowing with triumphant malice. My own reflection, wide-eyed and terrified, distorted on the polished steel. My body moved on pure instinct, a desperate final surge of that terrifying, unnatural strength. I dropped to one knee, simultaneously bringing my axe up, not to block, but to deflect. The machete glanced off the haft of my axe, sending a shower of sparks, narrowly missing my skull. Then, with a guttural roar, I shoved the axe handle forward, not aiming for a kill, but for a diversion. It worked. The blunt end of the axe caught the thing in its chest, knocking it off balance. It stumbled backward, a faint hissing sound escaping its throat. This was my chance. I didn't wait. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the searing pain in my arm and leg, and sprinted for the counter, for the gas cans. The hunger was a raging fire, but it was now a focused, weaponized rage. It recovered with impossible speed, a silent shadow. I heard it behind me, its silent footfalls closing the distance. My enhanced hearing screamed danger. I reached the counter, grabbed the first gas can, its cold metal a promise of salvation. But then, a sharp tug on my shirt. It had caught me. Its skeletal fingers, surprisingly strong, dug into my back, pulling me backward. I roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury, and swung the gas can behind me, a desperate, flailing blow. The metal can connected with a solid thud against its head. It staggered, its grip momentarily slackening. Not enough. I needed to do more. I needed to finish it. I dropped the gas can, spun around, axe raised, my eyes blazing with a feral intensity that mirrored its own. The emerald eyes were still there, but now, for the first time, I saw a flicker of something else. Not amusement, not calculation, something akin to surprise. It lunged again, machete sweeping low for my legs. I sidestepped, moving with a speed that shocked even myself, and brought the axe down, a powerful two-handed swing aimed directly at its head. It moved to block, bringing the machete up, but I was faster. The axe blade connected with a sickening crunch, not with its machete, but with its shoulder.
The bone splintered. The arm hung at an unnatural angle, the machete clattering to the floor. It shrieked in, a high-pitched, inhuman sound of pure agony and rage, something I hadn't heard from any infected before. It wasn't a moan, it was a scream. I didn't hesitate. I brought the axe down again and again and again. A relentless flurry of blows, fueled by the primal hunger, by the memory of Sarah, by the sheer, unadulterated terror of what it represented. The emerald eyes faded, the light within them extinguished. It fell, a broken, twitching heap, its body going still. My breath came in ragged, heaving gasps. My body trembled, not from fear, but from the immense exertion. The hunger was still there, a burning ember, but it was a cold fire now, the heat of battle spent. My arm throbbed, a dull ache, and my leg burned. But I was alive, and it was dead. I looked at the gas cans, then at the small, fragile body of Ben in the car, and then back at the lifeless form of the evolved infected. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. But some of us, some of the living, were adapting, becoming something new, something horrifying, something that could fight back. I scooped up all 5 gas cans, the weight reassuringly heavy in my hands. My new strength, a terrifying gift, made the task seem trivial. I staggered back to the car, slammed the cans into the trunk, and got behind the wheel. Ben was still huddled in the back seat, silent now. He hadn't seen the fight, thank God. I started the engine, the familiar roar a comforting sound after the silence of battle. I backed out of the campground, leaving the desolate general store, the dead woman, and the shattered nightmare of the evolved infected behind. The sun was fully up now, painting the world in a brutal, unforgiving light. My eyes fell on the cut on my arm, then the gash on my leg. They were bleeding, but the blood was different, darker, almost black. And the skin around the dog bite on my shoulder felt strangely hard, almost chitinous. I touched the cuts, wincing. The hunger was still there, but it was shifting, evolving. It was no longer just a craving. It was a recognition, an understanding of the new reality. My senses were sharper, my reflexes quicker, my pain tolerance higher. I was changing. And in a world where global extinction was unstoppable, perhaps changing was the only way to survive. But what was I changing into? And how much of Alex, how much of my humanity would be left when the transformation was complete?
The question hung heavy in the air, a chilling harbinger of the unknown road ahead. The cabin, that was the goal. But the true journey, the journey into what I was becoming, had only just begun.
The drive into the foothills was a blur of searing pain and a desperate race against an unseen clock. The cuts on my arm and leg burned with a feverish intensity, but it was the dog bite on my shoulder that throbbed with a deeper, more insidious ache. The skin around it felt hard, almost unyielding, and I could swear the discoloration was spreading, a spider web of dark tendrils creeping across my chest. My enhanced senses, once a terrifying novelty, now felt like a curse, amplifying every ache, every tremor, every shift in the insidious hunger that gnawed at my insides. Ben, huddled in the back seat, had started to whimper again. The exhaustion, the terror, the sheer enormity of what he had witnessed were taking their toll. He needed comfort. He needed safety. He needed a place where the phrase global extinction became unstoppable wasn't a daily reality. "Almost there, buddy," I murmured, my voice hoarse, trying to infuse it with a confidence I didn't feel. Just a little further. The landscape grew wilder, the mountains looming like silent sentinels against the perpetually bruised sky. The narrow, winding road was overgrown, branches scraping against the car, leaving fresh scars on the already battered sedan. Civilization had retreated here, leaving only the ancient forests and the unsettling stillness. I tried to keep my mind clear, to focus on the road, on the fragile life in the back seat. But the thoughts kept swirling, relentless as the mountain winds. The evolved infected, the machete, its intelligence, its speed. If there were more like it, then no cabin, no remote sanctuary would be truly safe. The virus, airborne and adaptable, was proving that the global extinction wasn't just about numbers. It was about evolution. The fuel gauge, a cruel mistress, flickered again, dancing dangerously close to empty despite the gas cans in the trunk. The old sedan was a gas guzzler, a relic from a world that didn't know the value of every single drop. We needed to stop, and soon. My eyes scanned the dense forest. A small, overgrown logging road, barely visible through the thick underbrush, offered a potential detour. It was risky, unknown, but it also promised seclusion, a place to hide, to rest, to finally transfer the fuel. I took the turn, the car lurching violently as the tires struggled for purchase on the rutted, muddy path. The trees closed in around us, forming a suffocating tunnel of green and shadow. The silence here was absolute, broken only by the chirping of unseen insects and the labored breathing of Ben. "Alex," Ben whispered from the back seat, his voice tiny, fragile. "I'm scared." My heart ached. I wanted to tell him it would be okay. I wanted to lie convincingly, but the words caught in my throat, choked by the bitter truth of our reality. "I know," I said instead, my voice rough. "Me too." The admission was surprisingly liberating. It was the first honest thing I'd said in days. The logging road continued for what felt like an eternity, winding deeper and deeper into the forest. The light grew dimmer,
the air colder. Just when I thought we were truly lost, the road opened into a small, forgotten clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a derelict logging cabin, its wooden walls rotting, its roof partially caved in. It was barely more than a shack, abandoned for decades.
But it was shelter, and more importantly, it was secluded. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was profound, heavy. I turned to Ben. "We're gonna stop here for a bit," I said, trying to smile, but my lips felt stiff, unfamiliar. "We'll get some gas for the car, and then we'll keep going." Ben just nodded, his eyes wide and watchful. He was a smart kid. He knew. I got out of the car, grabbing the axe. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the pervasive smell of decay. My legs felt stiff, my body heavy with exhaustion. The shoulder throbbed relentlessly, and the dark discoloration was now clearly visible, a menacing stain spreading across my collarbone. I walked to the trunk, my movements stiff and labored, and pulled out the gas cans. Each one felt heavier than it should, but my new strength, though waning with my exhaustion, still allowed me to carry them easily. I popped open the fuel tank of the sedan, the smell of gasoline sharp and invigorating. As I poured the fuel, a sudden sharp pain lanced through my head. My vision swam. The trees seemed to blur, to waver, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. A wave of intense nausea washed over me, making me gag. I dropped the gas can, clutching my head, trying to fight the overwhelming dizziness. The world spun, my stomach churned, and the hunger flared, a roaring inferno, consuming everything. It's happening. The chilling realization slammed into me, cold and absolute. The bite, the virus, it's taken hold. I staggered, my knees buckling. I could feel it now, the insidious change, deep within my bones, in my very cells. My skin felt tight, stretched. My senses, already heightened, became hyper-aware, almost painful. Every rustle of leaves, every distant chirp, every scent was amplified to an unbearable degree. And the hunger, it was no longer a gnawing ache. It was a screaming, burning need. A need for something primal, something bloody. Ben's voice, faint and distant, reached me. "Alex, are you okay?" I tried to answer, but the words caught in my throat, emerging as a low, guttural growl, a sound that was not my own, a sound that was familiar, the sound of them. Panic, raw and absolute, seized me. No, not like this, not now, not while Ben was here. I couldn't become one of them, not in front of him, not after everything. I stumbled towards the derelict cabin, a desperate, animalistic urge to hide, to contain this monstrous transformation. The wooden door, hanging precariously on a single hinge, gave way with a mournful groan. I threw myself inside, crashing to the floor amidst the dust and cobwebs. The cabin was dark, the air stale and thick with the scent of decay and old wood. I crawled deeper into the shadows, pressing myself against the farthest wall, trying to control the uncontrollable. My body convulsed, a violent tremor that racked my frame. My muscles spasmed, my jaw clenched, teeth grinding together.
The hunger roared, a demanding, insatiable void that threatened to consume my every thought, my every memory. Sarah, her face, vivid in my mind, a beacon of humanity, now distorted by the encroaching darkness. When the virus mutated Airborne, global extinction became unstoppable. And now it was consuming me from the inside out. My skin felt like it was crawling. My eyes burned. My vision was now a kaleidoscope of blurred shapes and amplified colors, every shadow a shifting monster. And I could hear it, Ben's breathing, close, too close, the subtle beat of his heart, the faint scent of his living blood. The hunger snapped into focus. It was a tangible thing, a physical craving, driving me, pushing me, overriding every rational thought. Feed! The word screamed in my mind, a terrifying primal command. No, I fought it. I fought it with every fiber of my being, with the last vestiges of my humanity. I thought of Sarah, of her kindness, her laughter. I thought of Ben, small and terrified, counting on me. I pressed my hands against my mouth, trying to stifle the guttural sounds, the growls that ripped from my throat. My fingers felt like claws, strong, rigid. My teeth felt elongated, sharpened. Ben's small voice, filled with terror, pierced through the fog of my transformation. "Alex, what's wrong? Why are you making those sounds?" He was outside the cabin, walking towards the door. My heart, still struggling to beat a human rhythm, pounded a desperate warning. "Run, Ben! Get away!" But I couldn't speak. I could only growl, a warning, a threat, a sound that was no longer human. I could feel the last threads of my consciousness fraying, dissolving into a maelstrom of primal instinct and ravenous hunger. My body was no longer my own. It was a vessel for the virus, an instrument of the unstoppable. Ben peered through the broken doorway, his small face etched with pure terror. His eyes, wide and innocent, met mine. And in that moment, I saw myself through his eyes, a monster, a thing of shadows and hunger. My face distorted by the change, my eyes burning with an unnatural light. "Alex," he whispered, his voice trembling, breaking. The hunger screamed. My body tensed, preparing to spring. The final, agonizing transformation was almost complete. But as I looked at Ben, at his pure, unadulterated fear, a single, solitary thought pierced through the overwhelming hunger. A memory. Sarah's laugh, her gentle touch, her unwavering belief in me. And in that last desperate moment of humanity, I made a choice. "The only choice left," I roared. Not a growl of hunger, but a scream of agony, of defiance, of raw, desperate will. It was a sound that was half human, half monster. "Run!" I screamed. The word ripped from my throat, raw and burning, but unmistakably human. "Run, Ben! Get away!" My body convulsed, a final violent tremor that shook the cabin. My vision swam, plunging into a swirling vortex of red and black. The hunger roared, triumphant, consuming everything. Ben, His face pale with terror, didn't hesitate. He turned, stumbled, and ran into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. I slumped against the wall, the last vestiges of my humanity dissolving, my consciousness fading into the insatiable void. The hunger was absolute, the primal urge overwhelming. I was lost, transformed, another victim, another weapon in the global extinction that had claimed the world. But Ben was free. He was alive. And in that terrifying final sacrifice, a small, tiny spark of hope flickered, somewhere deep within the monster I had become. The question now was not what I would become, but what I would do with this new, terrifying existence. Would I hunt the living, or would I, even as a monster, still find a way to fight? The answer lay buried in the cold, unyielding darkness of the transformed world, waiting to be unearthed. And for Ben, a small boy alone in a dying world, his desperate journey was only just beginning.